Renars podcast.
Well, hello, Karlis.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me at your house. We are sitting in very comfy chairs here. I came to Karlis' house. First of all, I couldn't find the place. He went out and fetching for me. Where is this guy? Then he catches me and finds me, brings in, and 2 seconds later, I start pushing his furniture around. Well, listen, thank you so much for having me over to have the Renars podcast and to have this conversation. So I approached you, I think it was like maybe 5-6 years ago. I think there was some kind of a post about the refugees coming to Latvia. And I think you posted something and I responded and I also commented and I messaged you with some kind of questions. And since then we started kind of having conversation. Mm-hmm. And now before I came back, I definitely knew that I wanted to have you on my podcast. And I said, do you mind? And you said, why not?
Yeah, and unless I'm mistaken, back then we conversed with one another in Latvian.
I'm not sure. No, actually from the very beginning it was in English. I knew that, well, maybe, I don't know, doesn't really matter.
We can look later.
He's an investigative journalist, and I'm in trouble if I'm saying anything wrong. So, journalist, I will go straight away to that. How did you decide and why did you choose journalism?
Well, when I finished high school in America, I spent 6 months in Washington, D.C. working as a page in the Senate. And then I spent a year at the Münster Latvian Gymnasium, as it was known, which was the only high school outside of occupied Latvia where classes were taught in Latvian. And when I got back to America, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself. I started in pre-law at the University of Illinois and found that wasn't interesting. And my mother said to me, well, you like to write, so why don't you try journalism? So after a year at the University of Illinois, I dropped out. I did other things for a while. And then I went to Northern Illinois University. I signed up for journalism and became a television journalist because when I went to the office, it was the television professor who was there. So he took me by the hand and, showed me around, and we had our own little TV station, and that's how it started. And the day after I graduated, I started working for a television station in deep southern Illinois. And then I spent 2 years working in Kansas, in Topeka, and then I moved here.
That's quite a lot of information right there. It's like
that's the Reader's Digest.
Yeah, but then it's like the first time, because when your mom said that, you like to write, you might try to be journalist, but it's it's not only about writing, and you end up being on a screen, being in front of people, talking to people. It's a debate. It's very back and forth. So writing wasn't the only thing. So how did you kind of realize that, here you go, I actually like to talk to people and find out things, because you as investigative journalism, that's what it's all about. It's finding out that information, get to the core.
Journalism is always about asking questions. It doesn't matter whether you do it on broadcast or for print. It's always asking questions. What I did at the university, we had our own little news program once a week, and I was chosen to be the main anchor for this program. And the other students came through as second anchors. So that got me into the anchor's chair. The first job that I worked in Southern Illinois, I anchored on Saturdays and Sundays the newscast, and then was a reporter on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. In Topeka, I was the responsible person for covering the state legislature, but the state legislature only met for 3 months a year, so I had lots of time to do other things. And I just gradually learned to talk about all sorts of different things and talk to many different kinds of people. And that's been true here in Latvia as well. I mean, I've done, for many years I did a show on Latvian television, me and 3 journalists discussing the issues of the week. I did years and years on Radio Latvia, interviewing people every day, different people about different kinds of things. And so, it's been 30 plus years now that I've been doing that, and it's second nature to me now.
Second nature for you, but would you say you have this, it's like a natural kind of urge, not urge, but that feel for to ask these questions and to find out and to put people on the spot, because very often, as we can see, like especially politicians, they weasel out of the questions, and you're quite notorious for that. I mean, I wouldn't say I've seen a lot of shows with you, but I've seen the ones which I've seen. And I can kind of relate to this because I love to put myself in positions where I ask questions maybe sometimes I shouldn't be asking, but obviously in your case that's your job, and I get very often in trouble saying things what I shouldn't be saying. But I love the way you're very straightforward and to the core, and so many politicians are like taken back by it. They're like, oh, did he just ask me this question? which is amazing. And so you did also radio shows as well. So do you still do anything on radio?
No.
No, it's only TV. Mm-hmm.
And the show I do now is it's not with guests. It is just me for half an hour talking about whatever I want to talk about that day. I write the script in the morning, and then I go over and record it in the afternoon, and then it's on in the evening.
So would you use notes, or do you have a teleprompter?
I have a teleprompter.
For that. Mm-hmm. And how is it? It's very different dynamic. Then you don't have anyone to bounce off. You don't have anyone to kind of, I'm talking, you talking. We have this kind of exchange of energy.
Yeah, that's true. But that's what the television station offered me. And so that's what I've been doing. I like doing this. I occasionally do the 90-minute chat show that we have when the other hosts are away. Mm-hmm. I've filled in, I've substituted for other people. Just yesterday I did the morning interview show with somebody from the fire department to talk about how to have Jani safely as opposed to unsafely. All the stuff he talked about, water hazards and fire hazards. I've never been a summer solstice celebrant, and talking to him made me understand that I'm going to be perfectly correct being here in this chair tonight.
It's much safer.
With a glass of wine and a TV set. And, the Latvians have this saying that if you go to sleep before the sun comes up on summer solstice eve, you'll be sleeping all summer. Which has always sounded like a good idea to me, but it never works out that way.
Oh, Latvians have all sorts of... For listeners who don't know what we're talking about, so as you mentioned, summer solstice, and that's something what people celebrate across the entire Europe pretty much, like mainly Eastern Europe, I would say.
Yeah, well, for pagans, it was the four turns of the year. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans started to understand the flow of time. Pagans picked it up. Solstice is always very big at Stonehenge in the UK. All sorts of druids and weird people like that turn up to do whatever it is they do there. For Latvians, it's the turns of the seasons. Basically for farm work, for when you're harvesting, when you're planting, and all that kind of stuff. And there are endless traditions and all sorts of folk songs and all kinds of stuff. And so this Jani is the big celebration. It's not on the solstice. The solstice is a couple of days before that. It's partly because it's taken from the feast of St. John of the Roman Catholic Church, which is a couple of days later. Only Latvians took it and made their own thing out of it. And what you're supposed to do is go out in the countryside, and there's this special cheese that you make, Jāņusirs, and you have a lot of beer, and you have a campfire, and you sing, and it's pretty awful, and
I'm actually just about to, as we finish this podcast, I'm going straight away to do this.
Yeah.
So since I was a kid, I was like I grew up in Latgale, as we talked about this before, and Latgalians have a little bit different traditions from like Kurzeme, like other side of Latvia. And one of our biggest ones I remember as a kid, I hated Jani from one perspective because all the jobs had to be done by the Jani. Because otherwise, there's tradition that other ligotāji or other celebrators would come and sing songs about you, that you're not, like, the garden is not clean and all stuff is not done.
Yeah, some of those folk songs can be really nasty.
Well,
I mean, they do have the war between women and men will sing trash about women, and women will sing trash about men. So
that was kind of a point. It's like a battle almost, or like something like teasing them. This is not done. But for a kid, I remember I have just kind of quite warm memories, and we did stay up all night and wait until the sun comes up, and the nights were very short anyways. Especially now, I was like crazy. It's 11 o'clock and it's still bright outside. It's pretty interesting.
We are quite far north here in Latvia. Kids don't have a choice about these kinds of things. I mean, when I was growing up, in America, of course, there wasn't summer solstice, but my family had friends who had sort of a country property up in Wisconsin, and so we would go there on the relevant weekend. I know that family lore has it that when I was 2, I ran into a hive of bees and almost got stung to death.
Oh no.
Which may be one reason I don't like Jani. I don't remember that, of course, but but I've been allergic to bees ever since. The first years that I lived here in Latvia, it felt sort of mandatory to go out and celebrate Jani. The very first year I was here, somebody took me out to see Skroda Dienas Silmačos, which is the central musical play of the season, and it was out in the countryside, and it was out on a field, and there was a little orchestra about half a mile away, so the singing and the orchestra were not in tempo particularly, but they had a cart with a horse and the cheese and the beer and everything, and so that was nice. But then the next night I went out to Talsi with a bunch of gay people, and that was not fun really at all, because it was partly because I sort of wanted to be with somebody and sort of didn't want to be with somebody, and I was sort of jealous that other guys were with one another.
It's with you, but not with you.
Yeah, exactly. Go out looking for the fern blossom. Yeah. So in the end, I caught the last bus, as it were, from Talsi at 2 o'clock in the morning and came back to Riga. One year, I was asked to go to Cesis. There was a Danish person who had a hotel there, and he was doing Jani. And he thought that there would be foreigners who would need translation, so he asked me to come as the translator, and it turned out that there were no foreigners, so there didn't have to be any translation, so I could also party. And the main thing I remember about that is that we spot in the next field over there was a cow.
Okay.
And so we were thinking, where does a cow fit into this kind of celebration? And the cow got a little crown of flowers, and then we sang to the cow and danced around the cow. I don't know what the cow thought, but
I couldn't wait to eat the
flowers.
Crown,
yeah. That's the long and the short of this holiday for me. Yeah. I stay at home.
So as you mentioned already, so you grew up in States. How old you were when you moved to Latvia? And before you moved to Latvia, you did come to Latvia quite often. Oh, you didn't?
I've been to Latvia. I came to at the age of 29 for a year.
Right.
Then I was back to America for a year. Then I came back in the autumn of 1991 thinking I would be here for 6 weeks, and now I've been here for 32 years.
Because very originally you came here to teach English?
I came to teach English. I was working in Kansas and starting to look for a new television job, up the career ladder. And my mother called me and she said she had been offered a job teaching English at the University of Latvia, because in America she wrote a book called Easy Way to Latvian for Americans who had the misfortune of finding a Latvian to partner with.
We have a common thing. My mom wrote a ABC for Latgalians.
There we go.
Boom.
There we go. But she said she couldn't. She had a project, and to this day I don't know what made me say it, but I said, okay, you stay with your project, I'll go instead. There you go. And as soon as I hung up, I was like, oh my God, what have I done?
What have I done?
I am not an English teacher. But God smiled. Topeka has a university, and that specific summer they were teaching a class on how to teach English as a second language. So that was some serendipity, and I took that course, and then, so in September 1989, I arrived here. My mom came with me for the first couple of months, and I taught at the university, and then the foreign language building was in the same, the department was in the same building as the journalism department, so when they found out that I was a journalist, I taught a seminar on film production in the second semester. But I also worked a lot with the Popular Front, which was the independence organization, particularly helping with their newsletter, because I had a sense of such terrible unfairness about the Soviet occupation, and they were throwing it off, and so I did everything I could to help. A couple of years ago, I got the Order of 3 stars for what I did.
Wow.
Did back then.
And what are the 3 stars for? Again, for people who don't know about Latvia much, that's one of the highest awards.
That is the highest.
Is the highest award. Mm-hmm. Is it like becoming a sir in United Kingdom?
No, you don't get a title with it. You get a little medal.
That is really cool. So we can show that. That is really cool. How often do you wear it?
Never. No. I mean, you're supposed to wear it at ceremonial occasions, but I don't go to ceremonial occasions very often. So no, I don't.
Well, one of my big questions actually is about how did you decide to actually stay in Latvia? What was well, you just mentioned about like that you see there's just so much unfairness. Did it felt like you had some kind of feeling of what is the word I'm looking for when you love your country? What is the word?
Patriotism.
Patriotism, is that?
No, not really.
Not really.
When I came back in 1991, it was to find office space for the World Federation of Latvians. That was my only reason I was here in September 1991, but August. And I went to the foreign minister.
Because 1991, that's where we got our independence.
Yeah, in August. I got here a week after the putsch and all of that. And my thought was that when I was back for the year, I was in the master's degree program at the University of Maryland and working part-time for the American-Latvian Association. And then in January 1991, the so-called barricade season began here in Latvia. The Soviet Union started acting up again. They killed 14 people in Lithuania who were guarding their television tower, and so people here in Riga started setting up barricades around key buildings and all that kind of stuff. And the job at the American-Latvian Association immediately became a full-time job because we were doing 24-hour monitoring, and somebody was always in the office, and we would talk to people on the phone in Latvia, and we had a telex, which is a really antique kind of thing, pre-email and pre all of that.
Telex was like some kind of a fax thing, or what was it?
No, it was, you typed on it, and a thing came out with holes punched in it, and then you fed it the whole. I can't imagine how it worked, but you put that in, and then somehow it sent it somewhere else, and the person on the other end could. I don't know how it worked, but we had a telex.
Now we have WhatsApp.
Yeah, now we have WhatsApp, exactly. And my thought was that I would go back to America and back to the master's degree program, but instead of working part-time at the American-Latvian Association, I would work part-time at the Latvian Embassy in Washington. So I went to the foreign minister with this idea, and he said, well, yeah, but first you need to spend a few months here learning diplomacy. And I thought, but did not say, what do you think you know about diplomacy after 50 years of Soviet occupation that I don't know? But, as soon as I as I agreed to do that, people were saying, you need to stay, you need to stay, you need to stay. And so I became the chef de cabinet of the Latvian Foreign Ministry, the chief assistant to the minister.
And that was also for your age, that was quite an achievement in the sense of you were like 30.
I was 30 or 31, yeah. It was it was easy for American Latvians back then. You could basically come and everybody would have something for you to do. Right. But that wasn't a very good job because the minister was just a mess. And so in February 1992, 2 young men came to my office and said, we are putting together the first independent television station in the ex-Soviet Union. Would you like to come and direct the news department? And I was like, yeah. And so I did that, and it was a little tiny station, NTV5, which could be seen by about 40 people in the center of Riga, I think. We did a half-hour news program every night, and then I did a 10-minute summary in English of the news. And I know that diplomats and people like that enjoyed that. That station went bankrupt. All of us moved to another startup, which also went bankrupt. And then I let my people go, and some of the people I found at the start have become real legends in Latvian television. There's a woman named Ilva Liepiņa, who was the chief anchor at public television, the Panorama show, for years and years and years and years and years and years. And I went to Latvian television. That's when I started the Journalism Roundtable program there. Yeah, that's how it happened. In parallel, during all this period until 2 years ago, I also taught journalism at the university.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
But so the answer to my original question, basically the reason why I kind of stuck around here, basically because there was so much to do. There was the sense of that you can help. And there was this what you could do here in Latvia, there's no way you can do in States.
Yeah, that's true. I would not have been teaching university with my bachelor's degree in America. I probably would not have had a television show that's seen in all of America, in the entire America. Latvia is a small pond.
Yeah, but also being part of helping kind of build the television back right when we got our independence back. So that was a...
Yeah, I am to a certain extent the sort of the grandfather of television news here in Latvia, both because I taught the subject and because I basically started. I brought it into the Latvian language, all the concepts from English. So we now have concepts like leads for lead and stuff like that. It just happened, and for the first years I would go back to Chicago visiting my sisters and always would say, well, one more year, but But then in the mid-90s, Riga became a livable city for me who grew up in Chicago, which is bigger than the 3 Baltic states put together. And so I could live here comfortably, and I had interesting things to do, and I had friends. And so now for many, many years, I go visiting to America, and then I come home to Latvia, as opposed to vice versa.
Right. And you're about to leave to States in 3 years. It's been last...
For the first time in 3 years, yeah. Next Thursday for a week. A little longer than a week, yeah. I always used to go for 2 weeks, and at the beginning of the second week, I'd start getting itchy about coming home. So this year, my sister said, well, come only for 1 week. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to see my sisters, and it'll be 4th of July, which is American Independence Day, so we'll go out and see the fireworks and everything, and I'll have some nice meals in restaurants, and I'll spend a whole bunch of time on my sister's sunny balcony, drinking tea in the morning and beer in the afternoon, and smoking cigars and reading books. And it'll be lovely.
So very excited. Can't wait to get out of here. That is incredible. But then straight away, I kind of want to ask, did you thought about actually the concept of podcast, your own podcast, where no one is telling you what to do and what not to do, what not to say, and what... I don't know how much you being directed and get directions at the moment what you do, or what you've done in the past before when you had actually guests and you had talked to people. I don't know how much there was they talk from the top, what you allowed to talk about, what you're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah, never really. When on those occasions when I have to have an earphone in my ear, I always tell the director, the only thing I want to hear from you is that there are 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, and so on. And generally speaking, they keep up with that. Nobody tells me what to ask. Nobody tells me what to write. The TV show I'm doing now, I write the script in the morning and send it to my producer. On very, 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 very rare occasions, she or somebody else at TV will have a question about what I have written. Right now, for example, we're in election time. We're having a parliamentary election in October, and for 120 days in advance, which is ludicrous, I am not allowed to say anything positive or negative about any politician or any political party because they might be candidates. Now, the candidate lists are going to be submitted to the Elections Commission only in late July and early August. We are currently in June. This started on the 4th of June, this censorship on the part of the state. And, so I find myself saying things on my TV show like, now, the party that I'm talking about is the one that was established in the early 1900s and has been mostly concerned with people who live in the countryside and what they do.
So someone has to decipher it.
Instead of saying Latvian Farmers Union, which is what the party is called.
And the title starts with the A.
Yeah.
In the middle there's two other letters.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So that's kind of silly. But generally speaking, I have always done whatever it is.
Which is great.
Yeah, as far as podcasts, I am not what you would describe as computer literate. I mean, I've had a computer for a long time. I know how to use the Word program and the internet. If something goes wrong, I have a young man who knows how to come and make it not wrong anymore.
Well, but in this case, I think you just need I need a crew. When one day, hopefully, I'm gonna have a crew. But you being in this industry and you know a lot of people, I think all you need to do is just to talk to some people and say, listen, I'm actually maybe considering to have my podcast with this kind of concept. Maybe it's gonna be one guest, two guests, or you can have your side like a co-host, or co-host can change. There's like. The reason I'm saying about it, because I think that podcasts give so much freedom. You can do as many shows as you want. You can talk about anything you want. There's so many platforms. Even though YouTube start censorizing it and start taking things out what they don't like, there's so many other platforms out there now where you can actually post that. It's like Spotify now is not only video, not only audio, but video as well. Even for me, like I started posting video as well. So this is going to be a video option on Spotify. And there just gives you so much freedoms to post them everywhere, and also just understand that more and more people are doing this quick reels and 2 minutes things. So when I'm going to be posting this podcast, I'm taking certain excerpts, certain little conversations where we had, and create like little reels which are only 1 minute long, and those will be like little hooks to get them in to see the whole video. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that,
people.
That's going to be meme right there. But what I'm trying to say is just like if you can get a nice crew behind you who can be just independent people who are very passionate about what you do, what you represent, and to get that word out there, except only like on TV once a week and you have to watch actually TV. Well, nowadays you probably can record it or do all those things.
Yeah. First of all, I'm on TV 5 nights a week, and as soon as I'm done, it goes on the internet, so people can look there as well.
Again, then maybe it's all good. Just probably kind of idea in the future, but. Because I would love to have see you on a show where you just go full tilt and just no one, you don't like it, you just walk away or whatever. Anyways, so that is kind of a serious subject we're talking about. Other subject which is less serious, I kind of thought to talk about the Eurovision. Yeah. So you being Eurovision voice for how many years now?
Oh, I haven't been for more than 10 years now.
So it's been gone for 10 years, so I haven't been really following. I remember that you used to be.
Yeah, I did it for, I'm thinking, we started the year before Brainstorm went and got 3rd place. So I'm thinking 1999, something like that. We did it 1 year when Latvia was not participating, and then when Latvia started participating. And I did it for probably, 13, 14, 15 years. But not since then. They've found other people. Every year, somebody writes to me on Facebook, "You were better."
Yeah, well, because also like I remember when I started following Norton Graham, who is the voice for UK for Eurovision. Like I always think yes. You guys have kind of like similar styles of like sarcasm and jokes around it.
Yeah, except I wasn't allowed to say that I thought that the band sucked, which Graham Norton is allowed to do, and I am not. I was not.
Oh God! I actually really enjoyed this film I watched recently. It's called the Eurovision song contest.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have.
I loved it. It was amazing.
Very funny comedy.
It was silly. It was very basic, but there was this point. Remember when they were in this castle and they had like a sing along thing, and all of them and all these winners from different years just coming in and singing. Actually, I'm gonna put that right now here, just so everyone can see and stop this conversation. Just to remind you, whoever haven't seen that film, definitely check it out. And Will Ferrell, so funny. Mm-hmm. Like when he comes out when they ask him to sing that "Ya Ya Ding Dong" again and again and again, he comes out. I can put up with this much shit, but this much, it's too much shit.
Yeah, and that thing with the winners. I mean, there have been some pretty memorable winners at Eurovision. That guy from Austria with the beard and the dress. For example, everybody in the world recognizes him. I would imagine now. Those people people from Finland who had the monster masks.
And the big heels and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like a Kiss concept, but like way more out there.
Yeah. The lesbian from Serbia who did the song Molitva with 6 women all around her. You can remember a lot of these people.
I think one of my favorite was all times being Conchita Wurst.
Yeah.
I honestly, and when she appeared in the Eurovision song contest in that film, I thought it was just beautiful because like the way they shot it as well, they didn't show her face first, and they show from behind, and then she turns around, and she's a beautiful singer, and what she represents and all that stuff. It was very interesting, but she wasn't really representing her own country, was she? On the actual sing, she was singing for someone else, for other countries.
She was representing Austria.
Right, but she's not from Austria.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think she was not from...
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so that was... I'm presuming that her own country didn't allow to represent her. I think that was the story. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking she was from Austria, but we can look that up later.
Someone can look it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a very fun film, and actually, like just recently, I started seeing this girl who is saying that she loves Eurovision. So they had all these British people just coming in and watching Eurovision. I was like, why are you guys watching? Because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, everybody says nobody will admit to actually liking Eurovision, but when the night comes, everybody sits down. To me, the problem is. It's gotten too big in the sense that, I mean, years ago they put in the semifinals because when the Soviet Union collapsed, all of a sudden there were 13 new countries, and Yugoslavia collapsed, and so there were 6 new countries. So they started the semifinal. But what they're doing now, then maybe 5 years ago, they split the vote. In order to mitigate the fact that Norway will always vote for Sweden and vice versa, and the Balkan countries will all vote for one another and vice versa, they put in a jury, and so the jury has half the vote, and the people have the other half of the vote. And I was watching this year, and for the first time that I saw, they go through all the countries, and all the countries say who got the points. This time they first went through all the juries and got the juries to announce their points, and then they started all over with the countries themselves for the popular vote, and it was like 2:00 in the morning, and I was like, no,
that's way too long. Why do you think they changed that? Why do you think they decided they need jury now?
Like I said, because for a long time this sort of geographic based voting was messing things up. Songs that didn't really deserve to be in the top 5 got into the top 3 because all the neighbors voted for them. Like Latvia always gave top points to Russia. Always. No matter, Russia could have sent a singing ape, and Latvians would have.
Which was usually the case.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
In studio in London, I have this kind of DJ mixer that I can put all these sounds on.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Oh yeah, and then England this year they got second, so they're very proud. They're very happy. Yeah, and first came Ukraine. So what do you think is going to happen there then?
Well, this year there was no option other than to vote for Ukraine. I mean,
but what's going to happen with the hosting country?
The jury only gave them 6th place, that song.
Oh, and
every country voted for Ukraine. Well, Zelensky has said that he would like to have it in Mariupol, which has been completely wiped off the face of the map, so that's not likely. I saw on the internet a couple of days ago, I think the UK has volunteered to take over if Ukraine can't, and Ukraine probably will not be able to. I mean, maybe they could do it in Kyiv, but if the UK was second, by default, I guess it would go to.
But when I checked the song, I actually liked Ukrainian song. It was pretty good.
I'm not a big fan of rap music.
Oh, okay.
So
you don't do this.
No, I don't.
No.
So I thought. I mean, I liked the guy with the flower pot on his head.
You like that one?
The pink
my
flower
favorite
pot.
was banana.
Yeah, also the banana. And then there was that weird flute kind of thing that the guy had. One of the late night shows, Stephen Colbert got one of those and was playing around with it on one of his shows in America.
And then there was one very erotic. There was these ladies like washing something, or was it not from this show? Not from this year. There was some like, I need to look it up. Maybe it was from the different year. There was something they literally like the bosom almost falling out and they're washing some clothes.
Yeah. I mean, anything to get attention at Eurovision.
Well, they got my attention.
Yeah. I mean, they've had, there's that band from Moldova, I'm thinking. They've been there 3 times. The first time their song was called Grandma Bangs the Drum, and they had a little old lady with a bass drum on stage. Anything to grab attention.
But one year there was a very beautiful song. Was it 2005? There was brothers, 2 twin brothers, I think they were, and they were singing the song "Fly on the Winds of Love, Fly, Baby, Fly."
Yeah, the Olsen brothers from Denmark.
I thought that was beautiful. That was a very beautiful song.
That was, and the next year the contest was in Copenhagen, and Estonia won. And the year after that, the contest was in Tallinn, and Latvia won.
And when Latvia won, and when we hosted, I worked for Baltic Times. I was doing a little bit of selling in, advertisement spaces on the newspaper, and I somehow end up going to the newsroom in where all these journalists were hanging out. And I remember when I was there, Tattoo came in, the Russian 2 girls. Everyone lost their shit. They were just jumping on the tables, taking photos and everything. But also I remember it was very interesting, colorful kind of type of people, journalists, all different hair and all sorts of like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I was in the arena. There were little booths for all of us commentators, and so I was there. Latvia tanked. Latvia got next to last place. Only Britain did worse than Latvia did that year, which was kind of embarrassing. Yeah, it was kind of embarrassing. But I mean, what I learned during that week was that nobody really sends dilettantes to the Eurovision Song Contest. The woman who was representing France, her day job was singing all the female roles in all the Disney movies in French. The group from Slovenia had learned not just their song, but all the songs that were in the final, and could sing any of them in harmony. So, people prepare, and it's not a schlocky kind of thing. It's, a lot of people think it's sort of like German schlagers, and that's that. It's not at all. People go to great lengths to put together a good act.
Because also for some of these bands, some of these performers, that's a segue or a way to get out there and to get their name out there. Maybe for some of them it's already a very short period of time, but some of them actually start getting good or get better offers and better gigs.
Yeah,
like
the only 2 people who have really become megastars after winning Eurovision are Celine Dion and ABBA.
Yeah, well, ABBA, I think they were already doing very well before Eurovision.
No, that's where they started. They sang Waterloo, and that was their Eurovision song. The song Volare, started its life as a Eurovision song.
I him singing, yes. Yeah. How often have you been singing on the screen?
I don't sing. I don't sing.
There you go.
No.
Karlis Streips.
That started its life as a Eurovision song.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, so here you go. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. And apparently this year, I heard it, and my British friend, she was like, listen, Latvians have the shittiest song ever. They sing about vegetables and being vegan or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, the first line was something about I like to eat pussy or something like that. And I think they made them, they tone it down for Eurovision. But they tanked. The last time we were in the final was in 2016. Oh. A guy called Just, and the year before that it was a woman called Aminata who got like 6th place, which was the best we'd done in a long time. Yeah. Since the semifinals, Latvia has hardly ever gotten out of the semifinals, and like 5 or 6 times has been dead last in their semifinal. So I don't know why that is. Some of those songs I thought were perfectly okay,
Well, that again, it's also getting very political in certain senses, and some people who are also spoke before, they're like, it's not about context, it's about a little show, it's like a TV show, but it's also very political.
Well, it can be. This year it clearly was. The Eurovision goes to great lengths to try not to be political at all. One year, the start of the Portuguese song was the signal for people in Portugal to start a revolution.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. People have sung, Ukrainians in particular have sent political songs to Eurovision. There was that Verka Serduchka woman who was singing "We Don't Want No Putin."
Yeah.
But there was also a song about the deportation of the Crimean Tatars in 1944, and I think Ukraine won that year again.
Wow.
They've won 3 times. There was Ruslana with wild dances, that sort of caveman-looking woman, and then Jamala won, and now these Kalusha Orchestra has won.
The boy who was playing a violin, wasn't he Ukrainian, but he was representing
He was
a different
originally
country.
from Belarus,
Belarus,
but his family moved to Norway when he was small, and so he represented Norway.
Yeah,
Alexander.
and this Eurovision film, he was there as well playing. Yeah, really nice. Listen, let's have a little break so I can have a break in my cameras.
Okay.
And then we're gonna be back in a second. Anyways, okay, we are back. Here you go. Here with Karlis, having a good chat, good laugh, and you don't get very often very kind of a fun, not fun conversations, but it's very a free conversations. Because what you do, it's quite.
Well, the show I do is supposed to be satirical and ironic.
Oh, okay.
The problem is that a lot of stuff that goes on in the world right now doesn't really lend itself to sarcasm and irony. I mean, there are people who can do that. John Oliver, for example, can take any topic and make it funny, even if it's really a very dark subject. So I try to put a little bit of a twist when I'm talking about the war in Ukraine or whatever that is really a heavy object. One thing that I had a problem with my producers was that I really wanted to make vicious fun of anti-vaxxers and these crazy people who have decided that they know better than all the world's doctors and immunologists and everything. They know better because Bill Gates wants to put a chip in them or whatever that bullshit was. And so I wanted to call them, I wanted to call them stupid, and they wouldn't let me call them stupid. So I have to call them stupid without calling them stupid.
How did you do it?
People who haven't thought things through properly, or something like
Can you
that.
imagine you lose your stuff on a public transport? You are someone who hasn't thought your stuff through. What, you call me stupid? No.
I mean, the whole time, I did everything you're supposed to do. I have never been vaccinated for anything in my life. Apart, I was a kid and whatever, and once a tetanus shot when I got a piece of wood under my nail. But here in Latvia, I don't get vaccinated against flu or encephalitis that you can get from ticks or anything like that, because I don't go where places where there ticks can be, and flu is flu. But this time I knew it had to be done, so as soon as I could get the shot, I went. It was on Easter Sunday last year. They called the day before and said, "We have an open slot. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, fine, whatever." And so we couldn't have Easter with family. It was all lockdown. So off I went, and I got the shot. And where I had to wear a mask, I wore the mask, and I did all the stuff that I was supposed to do. And it just got very annoying to me that there were people who were purposefully not doing those things. And I mean, it took forever. Once we got the vaccine program going, it took forever to get the population over 50% vaccinated. And then it got to about 70% at the beginning of this year, and it stopped. There are still 30% of people in Latvia who have not been vaccinated at all. And we know that there's another variant coming. And we know that in the autumn, that means that the hospitals are going to be overloaded again. And we're going to have lockdowns again. And we're going to have to wear masks in stores again. And I'm just pissed about this because all you need to do is go and get that fucking shot. That's it. It's not like you have to give up your firstborn. And you've never been stupid about any other medical issue. If you have a heart attack, you're not going to start arguing with the doctor about how to treat your heart attack. So why are you being such a smartass with respect to the coronavirus? That just makes no sense to me.
Do you think it's the case because there's so many different sources of information, and when they get themselves in a rabbit hole looking after all these who are anti-vaxxers and they giving all this data, I think that's the biggest problem with anything.
That is. I mean, there's nothing other than that to excuse the fact that a corrupt businessman from New York was president of the United States for 4 years. There was no excuse for that other than people believed all sorts of nonsense about the Democrats and whatnot. And it's true. But there are people who should know better. There is one particular member of parliament here in Latvia, Aldis Gobzems is his name, who decided to stake his reputation on being an anti-vaxxer. And back when everybody was supposed to wear a mask at stores, he would take pictures of himself in a store not wearing a mask and grinning and being all happy about it. He once posted, when the vaccine started, he once posted an image of himself standing in the middle of the road with a yellow Star of David taped onto his chest.
Yeah.
The yellow Star of David, which was the symbol of Jews in the Holocaust. This is what he compared it to. This is what he compared vaccination to, was the Holocaust against the Jews. It is just incomprehensible to me how somebody can be such an unbelievable jackass. And he has twice been banned from 6 parliamentary sessions in a row because the first time was because he turned up the very first day Parliament came back from being doing absentee meetings, Zoom meetings. The very first day they came back, he turned up and said, "I'm not going to tell you whether I'm vaccinated or not." And that meant that the entire Parliament, which had been meeting in the hall, had to all go back and be at Zoom. I don't know why they had to do that and they didn't just tell him to get stuffed, but that was 6 weeks once, and then the other 6 weeks was because he went out, he was in Kurzeme talking to, he has a new political party and he's running in this year's election, and gathering larger crowds than were allowed and getting all up in the face of police officers who were trying to stop him from doing so and saying very rude things to them. And so he got 61 administrative offense charges filed against him in like a week's time. And he also got, again, banned from six weeks in Parliament. And this guy is kind of a lunatic. He used to be a lawyer, and we had a department store collapsed in 2015, I'm thinking, and the Zolitude, the department store. Yeah. And he volunteered to represent the survivors and the victims or whatever, and didn't do anything for them. And didn't show up for the court cases and whatever. And so he got disbarred. He got his law license taken away. Just exactly at the same time that he and a lunatic actor called Artūrs Kaimiņš convinced enough people to give them 16 seats.
Mr. Kaimiņš is very popular in Latvia.
Yeah, he is. To convince the people of Latvia to give them 16 seats in Parliament.
Wow.
And he's been there ever since. And since he's been back from his latest ban, he signs up to talk about every single issue that there is. If the question is, should this proposal be submitted to committee, then one person speaks for and one person speaks against. If Gobzems signs up first to speak for, then he will speak for. He will usually talk about anything other than what the actual thing is. The Speaker of the Parliament will be sitting there with her little hammer. But if he doesn't manage to sign up first to speak for, he'll sign up second to speak against, even though he's actually for, and that'll allow him to babble about.
And no one does anything about kind of getting him out.
Well, the Speaker, when she gets fed up with him, will bang her hammer and say, "Mr. Gobzems, you are not speaking about the subject." And then there was a thing a couple of weeks ago where he called another member a rude name, and then the other member called him a rude name. And so all of this is now before the Parliamentary Ethics Committee, and politics is always fun.
This segment is going to be dedicated only to Mr. Gobzems.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But also, this is kind of a nice segue, talking about a little bit about the credibility in news, the concept of credibility, and especially nowadays. So how do you make your decisions regarding what are the credible sources, what are not credible sources? Like when I studied for a very short period of time journalism in Canada, we had a subject, the investigative journalism, and one of the first classes we had, our professor would say, so now let's figure out what sources we can trust. And he straight away called all the biggest Foxes and whatever, Fox News and BBC News. He's like, forget all of those. And he gave us like 4 or 5 websites. We go in, and on these websites, just information comes up, and someone writes from somewhere, whatever that is, and he says, so you need to check all these 4, analyze them, and decide which one would get the most weight, and that would be kind of the credible source. Mm-hmm. So that's as far as I can remember. Maybe it's right or wrong, so I'm wondering how are you looking at it?
Well, that's journalism in the 21st century, clearly, because Fox News, Fox News is the propaganda arm of the Republican Party of the United States.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
the BBC, yes, because the BBC is a serious news operation and has been for 100 years. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian in the UK, those I consider to be serious sources. The problem with the internet is not that it cannot be trusted, it's just that it's so damn sparkly. You know, it's always shining and click on this and click on that and click on this and click on that, and you know, you can get yourself lost in there and find you've been there for 6 hours just bouncing around for whatever. But you know, I've been at it long enough that if for example, if my topic is going to be you know, politics in Germany or whatever for the day, I know where to go to find information. I start with Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not the most trustworthy source because anybody can put anything there, but they have a very rigorous editing system. So I can, for basic facts like Berlin is the capital of Germany, you know, that's a kind of thing. I couldn't do the show I do without the internet. That's very clear. But you know, I also use it. I have a section called Today in History, and there's a site that the Latvian National Library has where you can look at what newspapers were writing, like on this date 100 years ago or 50 years ago or whatever, and so I can find ideas for that there. There is a site called Barikopedia, which is about what happened on specific dates from 1988 until 1991, which was sort of the Latvian Renaissance period, when we were working towards regaining our independence. So there's a lot of good resources that for various purposes that I can find. The main thing for me every morning is to decide what I'm going to devote the bulk of the show to, because I have the first part is a little story about something, then I show a cartoon, a comic illustration. Then I have a thing called Suminājums where I congratulate somebody for something, and then I have the history thing, but then I have the main part, which is called Prāta mechanika, mechanics of the mind. And that's 12 or 13 minutes of script. And so it's not every morning is it readily evident what that topic is going to be, but I find something and I start writing. And when Parliament is in session, they have meetings on Thursdays, but they have committee meetings all the other days. So there's always something there, and sometimes they are talking about something that I can expand to 12 minutes. There's lots of different sources, but the point is that people who do not have an education in journalism like I do, don't know what's right and what's wrong. Exactly. And you know, in America there are millions and millions and millions of people who think that Tucker Carlson tells them the truth, when nothing could be farther from the truth. He actually got a court to declare that his show is not a news program, it's an entertainment program. And as far as I'm concerned, Fox News should run a thing underneath his show every night just saying, this is bullshit, do not trust this, the man is lying to you, this is bullshit, do not trust this man, he is lying to you. But people do, and that's how people get into this, you know, these ridiculous ideas that, you know, all Democrats are pedophiles and Hillary Clinton is running a pedophile sex ring in the basement of a pizzeria in DC. And I mean, I just don't understand how somebody can get that crazy lunatic, if only in the sense that there are still hundreds of thousands of people in America who think that Trump won in 2020. Even though he lost by 8 million votes, and it wasn't anywhere close in the Electoral College.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're seeing now with the January committee hearings. They are doing an excellent job putting together sort of every day sort of an audio-visual presentation of one specific aspect of what happened on that day. Like one day they'll be talking about how they tried to get Vice President Pence to accept fake votes, and then the most recent one this past Thursday was one on how Trump and his people were trying to get Republicans in the relevant states to put together alternative slates of electors instead of the ones who actually represented the majority vote. And I mean, that thing they got really close to actually overthrowing the American government on the 6th of January.
Yeah.
And, one thing that we have learned is they were yelling, hang Mike Pence, because Pence refused to do what Trump wanted him to do, which was to reject the legitimate votes from these states. And we now know that the protesters got within 10 meters of him as he was being whisked away. The protesters were 10 meters away from him behind a door. And I mean, it was a violent upheaval. Fox News has ever since presented it as legitimate political discourse. They were basically tourists. They were just there. And, that to me is people who will not even believe what they see with their own eyes.
Yeah.
And Trump used to say that to his crowd. He said, don't believe what you see on television and don't believe what you read in the newspapers. I am telling you the truth. And you have to be some kind of abysmal moron to buy into something like that.
So what is the kind of way for general public? Is it just to look in different sources, or kind of know already, obviously, Fox is, talking bullshit and just kind of recognize it? Or what would you suggest for people who are just kind of trying to figure it out? And also you teach students in university?
No, not anymore. No.
When did you stop? And
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And before that you taught for how long?
Since 1992.
Right. And what was exactly your subject?
I taught news writing and feature writing.
News writing, feature writing. So how you would talk to your students about where should they get their source and how to get that source?
Well, for news writing, the main thing is that there are two sides to every issue. So if you're talking with somebody on the pro side, you need to find somebody the anti side. But generally speaking, what I would say to people is ask yourself, does this really make sense?
So follow the common sense kind of.
Yeah. Ask yourself, does it really make sense to believe that Bill Gates has this scheme to put microchips in every person in the world? Ask yourself whether he could actually do that. Ask yourself why he would want to do something like that. Ask yourself whether a microchip can be made small enough to be injected through a vaccine needle. Ask yourself all of these things. But again, I mean, these people are so far down the rabbit hole that it's a surprise that they can even breathe. It's just ridiculous.
Where's the question? Just the gullibility and lack of critical thinking. And it's like, for me, when I studied business in university, I think one of the greatest things what I learned from doing my master thesis was that to understand what are the sources you could trust from. So I would bring to my professor this book, then I bring this source from internet, and my professor would look at it and he's like, okay, or she be like, this wouldn't be good because of that. And then I kind of start thinking, why would not be good enough to take that as information and put it in my work? And then you kind of start understanding how it works. And now very often when someone says oh, Renars, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I would say, this is what I might think, but what is the truth? You need to properly look into it, invest your time and to study those things instead of oh, well, that's in Latvian we have the Timecodes, or that lady said it and I heard it somewhere there and that's what it is. No. Did you do your own research? Did you look at it and spend your time? And people mainly are just lazy to do that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. In America, America has one specific problem, which is that for all practical purposes, America only has two political parties, which means that the two political parties can see politics as a zero-sum game. And if we win, everything will be bad, and if they win, it'll be a complete disaster. They both do that. And
it can be only black and white, basically. What
exactly,
they say. Yeah.
Only black and white. That's one thing, and the other thing is that it really is true that the internet has ruined a great many people, because the internet for years and years and years and years has basically been a Wild West kind of thing, and an anything goes kind of thing. And if you're not particularly intelligent to begin with, or discerning, you can find yourself believing just the most astonishing things.
Yeah, and it's now they have more of a kind of safety precautionary kind of things for, let's say, for Twitter or for YouTube, so you can actually figure out like comments are coming actually from bots, like they say they call Russian bots. So, or like it could be these bots from anywhere, and like Joe Rogan talks about it a lot, and other people who are into podcasts, and they say I posted something, and then straight away you have all these negative comments. They don't even come from real people.
Yeah.
And then some other real people come to you, oh yeah, that's negative, oh yeah, I'm gonna come with this, and they just jump on that bandwagon and like not even understanding what is going on.
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter. I over the course of the years, I have sometimes put together a profile just to see what people are on about. I always end up getting banned because I can't help telling Republicans exactly what I think of them. And the most recent time was there's a blonde woman named Tammy Lofgren who is one of these absolutely crazy Republican women, and I called her a bimbo.
Yeah.
And I got banned for life for calling her a bimbo. Oh well. My social medium is Facebook.
Yeah.
I occasionally get suspended on Facebook as well.
Oh, really?
But Facebook is a lot easier than Twitter is. Twitter is very prissy about.
Yeah. They are very sensitive. They're very sensitive. Like if you dead name someone, you can get into real trouble, and they just kind of. Also, the people we're talking about, like right now, this is a very very. Crazy, not issue, but like current thing to talk about is like the gender fluidity and transgender. And then if you dead name someone or you don't kind of accept that, then a man who identifies them as a woman and other way around. And Twitter goes straight away because they call it the Vogue era. Vogue. Sorry. Yeah.
Vogue. I mean, I'm 61. When I
I'm like 45.
61. When I was coming up, there was really only the G and the L in the 1970s, and maybe the B for bisexual. Now we've gotten to the point where, Google offers 67 different identities. To be perfectly honest, I think that's a little silly. That's a little crazy.
Oh, you just said that. I'm going to post it and we're going to ban both of us.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. I mean, I absolutely do not want to deny any single person in the world his or her or their right to be whoever he or she or they want to be. It's none of my business. You go right ahead. But as somebody who works with language, I do sort of have an objection to this they business. It doesn't make sense in linguistic and lexical sense. Those sentences in which a single person is identified as they, it doesn't make linguistic sense. Now, this is not a disastrous problem, and this is not an insuperable problem. But I can see where people like Republicans look at all of this and think, the Democrats have just gone bullshit crazy. Look at what they're talking about. And they overreact. They overreact by passing like the Don't Say Gay thing in Florida, where teachers from kindergarten until the end of high school are not allowed to talk about human sexuality at all. None, nothing at all. Now, that is human sexuality needs to be discussed starting very young. And when I was 7 years old, I was the most naive little kid in the world about stuff like that. These days, small children on the internet and on television have seen not just that alone, and they need to have somebody who helps them steer through that. Obviously, you talk about that in the first grade differently than you talk about that in senior year in high school, obviously. But you don't ban it altogether. The Republicans have made this whole hoo-ha out of race theory, which is an academic thing at the graduate level, but they have turned it into something, they have convinced themselves that what critical race theory really is trying to make white people feel bad about themselves, and specifically to make white children feel bad about themselves. And what this has turned into is a number of laws basically banning the teaching of racial history in America, which includes things like racism, slavery, and the race riots and Jim Crow. That's now all off the table because white children might feel uncomfortable.
But that also was not just now, it was very before that. If you think about like Columbus, how often in history they were teaching that Columbus was this crazy man who was killing and slaughtering these people. And then now they talk about it, and I was like, oh, actually that's who he was, and we're celebrating his day. And that's not only about Columbus, there's all these like the travelers and they who did the, not occupying, but colonizing and like the atrocities they were doing with these people.
And we need to know that. I mean, but to me the strange thing about Christopher Columbus is that he is seen as the discoverer of America, and Americans get a day off for Columbus Day, even though he never set foot in one square. Right? It came from Amerigo Vespucci, who also never visited what is now the United States.
Who was the person then? Who was the first?
Traditionally, Leif Erikson, the Viking, from way back when. It is thought that people from Europe started going to, across the Atlantic Ocean far earlier than all the recorded things that we know now. But the point is that children need to learn about stuff like that. I'm sure when I was in elementary school, I learned that Christopher Columbus discovered America, and that was pretty much the long and the short of it. When I was in high school, I would hope I learned that he brought diseases that wiped out all the indigenous people and basically made everybody else a slave, as one did in that time. The point is that history doesn't change just because somebody doesn't like it.
Yeah, exactly. And they should be showing exactly what happened instead of putting a flower spin on it. Just tell what happened. And people are like that. And it kind of, from a jungle survival perspective, it makes sense. They don't have weapons I have, so that means I can take over them. Because at the time, they didn't have that idea of like, we are all equal. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what skin color you are. It was about, oh, he looks different, she looks different. That means that there's something, they don't believe in the same God and things like that.
Yeah, let's wipe them out.
Exactly.
I mean, it is true that there are lots of aspects of history which are debatable. One example is what happened in Latvia in 1941. Did the Soviet Union invade in a totalitarian manner and occupy Latvia for the next 50 years, or did Latvia voluntarily become part of the Soviet Union? Because after the Soviets invaded, they very quickly organized an election, elected a sham parliament. The only purpose of the sham parliament was to send a delegation off to Moscow and say, please, can we be part of the Soviet Union? So that the Soviet Union, during the entire 50 years of the occupation, could say, well, Latvians volunteered to sign up for this.
And most likely they were standing there with the baseball bats or something. If you're not going to do this, we're just going to come and do it forcefully. So that's what. And remember there was this cartoon. I would show it to some of my foreigner friends just to show how often these different countries were taking over Latvia. It's a 3 stars little cartoon thing when they like puppets, like this Latvian guy sitting and playing on his quickly, and that these guys are just coming in. One is taking over, the other taking over, and then the Germans coming in, the Russians coming in, and it's like, and he's like, and then when the Soviet was coming in, the cartoon even has this like little dance that the Soviet guys actually dancing, hut hut hut, družba, and like hut, and like it showed like that this Latvian guys kind of, oh, what to do now? Oh, okay, družba kind of thing. But they should show that there was behind someone standing with a bat, and if you're not going to say družba, we're going to take you over.
A kwakle, ladies and gentlemen, is an instrument you hold in your lap and pluck. It's like a zither.
Hey, that's another excerpt. Explanation of kwakle.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, that the things like that, it depends on where you grew up. And I mean, in America, we all knew that it was an occupation. It was a terrible, awful occupation, and what a naughty thing for the Soviets to do. But people in Russia all believed that the Soviet Union was a good thing and never did anything bad. And I mean, for that matter, people in Russia today believe that
special mission.
Yeah, there's no war in Ukraine. Yeah. That's crazy. I see on TV like they're interviewing young Russians who are somewhere else, and the young Russians are saying like, even though I'm here in Ukraine and can, you know, show them bombed out places and stuff, they don't believe that the Russians did it. The Ukrainians did it themselves, or you know, I don't know, a meteor fell down or whatever. Yeah. They've drunk the Kool-Aid.
There's a very huge Russian community in Bali, so I spent quite a lot of time there, and there's some Russians who I know, and they were very, I won't say proactive for the war, but they were trying to defend the Russian side, and they would get all these kind of different videos and posts about how they show that the Ukrainians are actually bombing some of their buildings and to blame that on Russians and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just like some of that you look at it and you think, what is going on?
Well, back during Crimea, there was that supposed image of a little crucified Ukrainian boy or Russian boy or whatever it was. Somebody wicked had crucified this little boy. And it was fake from the minute it appeared on the internet, but lots of people ran with it to say what awful Nazis the Ukrainians are. Oh. You know, Russia, that's Ukraine's problem. Russia has been claiming that it's being run by Nazis forever. And it occupied Crimea. It has been marauding in southeastern Ukraine. Ukraine's big problem is that entirely apart from that, it has been one corrupt kind of place. You know, it has its oligarchs and its nonsense, and it has had its venal politicians. But now they got this new president. Ukraine elected him a majority in parliament for his program, and Russia started to act up again. And, you know, and of course there was the whole thing with Donald Trump trying to use Zelensky for his own purposes and whatnot. He never really got a chance to put Ukraine together. But now, this to me is the remarkable thing. The world did not come together like this when Russia took Crimea. Mm-hmm. The world, for that matter, has not come together like this to deal with Yemen, where Saudi Arabia has been conducting genocide for years and years and years and years and years now with the help of Russia. This time, the whole world came together. And, you know, the European Union has just decided that it is going to give Ukraine candidate country status, which if the Russia had left it completely alone would not be true right now, because Ukraine is not anywhere near ready to be a member state of the European Union. But on the other hand, the European Union admitted Bulgaria and Romania before they were really ready.
Especially Romania.
Especially Romania. So why not Ukraine? I mean, they have to resolve the war first. They're not going to take a country in which a war is going on. That's obvious, you know. And NATO even less will take a country in which there's a war going on. But eventually, they're going to have to come to some sort of a conclusion. I hope it's not going to have to be Ukraine giving up a bunch of its territory. Yeah. Because if it does, the Russians will only try again sometime in the future. They need to get all the Russians out of there. Crimea, you know, who knows? Crimea became part of Ukraine only in the 1950s, and only because Nikita Khrushchev wanted to make nice with the Ukrainians. Crimea is a different thing, but they need to get all the Russians out of there. Putin needs to die. I don't know.
Right now?
Yeah, preferably right now. I don't know what will come after him. It might be worse.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There might be a military coup in Russia. But, you know, the Ukrainians, Ukraine is in the same situation as basically all the former Soviet countries have. When the Soviet Union collapsed, a bunch of Soviet-minded people suddenly found themselves in different countries. And here in Latvia, this manifested itself in 2012, where people organized a referendum on the issue of whether Russian should be given state language status as a second language in Latvia. No. You know, a large majority said no to that.
So what changed after that? Because I'm a product of going to school where we have Russians and Latvians in kindergarten, school, not in the university. When I joined university, that didn't happen anymore. But like kindergarten and school, we had two sides. We had Latvians and Russians.
Yeah.
So what is it now then?
Yeah, I thought the moment I got to this country in the the late 1980s, and especially when I came back after Latvia had actually gotten its independence, that it was ludicrous for the state to be financing Russian schools. They should have stopped that in 1992. There would have been a terrible fuss, but Russia would not have been able to do anything. That was Yeltsin. That was a completely different Russia. It was a weak Russia, and we wouldn't have this problem now. Our parliament decided a couple of months ago that now we are going to start gradually going to a system where all classes in all schools in Latvia are taught in Latvian over the next 6 years. It has been 32 fucking years since Latvia got its independence. This is ludicrous. It's ludicrous. For a number of years now, the state exams after 9th grade and 12th grade have only been in Latvian. So at least theoretically, all of the children who are taking these tests have sufficient Latvian to be able to take a test in mathematics and whatever they do. I learned recently that on these state tests, a passing grade on the Latvian government state test is 5%.
Oh my God.
So you don't really need to know anything to pass these
just go
tests.
to spend some time in Daugavpils. I remember last time I was there, it was a long time ago, but as far as I know, not much have changed. You go to the store and ask something in Latvian, they look at you like, what language do you speak? And then say in Russian, and if you don't speak Russian, you're not going to get anything.
Yeah, I don't know about Daugavpils. I don't think that's mostly true anymore. I remember that too. Shopkeepers just turning their back on you if you were speaking the language of the dogs, as they used to call it.
Oh, I actually had experienced this. Someone did that to me. Someone said it to me, and there was an older generation guy, and I think he asked me something, or asked something, said like, "Я не говорю по-собачьи." That's what he said to me.
Yeah.
Which means I don't speak dog language.
Yeah. Well, I know how to say, "Извините, я латыш из Америки, я не понимаю по-русски."
So you're Russian, you never really kind of got into it. You were...
No, because I don't live in Russia.
Here you go. Well, you see, like, it's interesting when you say, like, you know, it's bad that we have still Russian schools and Russian language in schools. But I was a huge winner. I speak fluently Russian, and like anywhere I travel in the world, I'm not going to use that much of Latvian, but I'm going to use a lot of Russians because Russians are everywhere.
How old are you? When were you born?
I was born in 1984.
84.
Yeah. So I was 7 years old when it collapsed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that Russian is in some way a bad language.
No. I'm just saying, I always try to look the silver lining and the glass half full and all that stuff. Exactly. Of course, it's quite crazy to see that we have kids like half this, half that, and whatever is happening. Because like there's some universities where they speak only in Russian. There are actually universities where the main language is Russian.
Not in Latvia.
Not anymore?
No.
Then I remember when I was getting into it, like, and I had some Russian students I knew, and they said like, well, I'm going to go to this university because they mainly speak Russian there.
Yeah.
Or mainly they would not say that they speak Russian, but it's Russian, but it's...
Yeah, maybe it still goes on somewhere, but it's not supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not supposed to. But I mean, that's true. Latvians are a small nation. There are only about 2 million Latvians in the world. In America, if the occupation had gone on much longer, there probably wouldn't be very many younger generation Latvians still speaking Latvian. and marrying other Latvians in the United States. I was born in 1960, which was like 5 years after my parents arrived in America with their parents, and then got married. So I grew up speaking Latvian. We only ever spoke Latvian at home. When I arrived in kindergarten at the age of 5, I didn't speak a word of English. Oh, wow. Much to the horror of Miss Green, who was the teacher.
Shout out to Miss Green.
Shout out. I don't know if Miss Green will be watching this 60 years later. But
by some certain reasons.
Yeah, she'll be in her 90s now. But yeah. And she told my mother that the child is an American, and so my mother should speak English to him. And my mother, being polite, smiled and nodded, and we went back home and kept on speaking Latvian. Yeah. But children learn languages very quickly. Oh, yeah. And a specific thing for me was that my mother grew up in a family only with girls. Mm-hmm. And so when I was born as her first child, a boy, she didn't really know what to do with me, so she taught me. And I could read when I was 3. And I knew my numbers and everything else. Yeah. And so in kindergarten, at the age of 5, when I learned the language and I looked around and I thought, all these other kids are really idiots. They don't know anything. And that ended with 6 weeks in first grade, and then I got yanked out and put into second grade. I skipped a grade, which they don't do anymore because that's a very, very wicked thing to do to a little kid. Yeah, all of a sudden, you're a year younger and you're supposed to be smarter than all the rest of them. No, that doesn't really work. But if you're talking about silver linings, I was graduated from high school when I was 16. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A year and a half faster than I otherwise have been. Skipped 1 year and then finished high school in 3.5. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but with like Russian language, I do feel quite blessed that in Latvia I was exposed to it. Well, even if it wouldn't be a school case, I had all the kids on the street who were Russians. Like I want to go play ball with them, need to learn the language. And then also there was a huge influence from the Soviet Union, from all the movies, cartoons. Yeah. So it was like Nu Pagadi Zayats and like the Tom and Jerry version of Russians and all the films. And I do feel quite actually good about it, certain of that, because like the Russian humor is pretty cool, and I enjoy those films, and I still can, if I meet some Russians somewhere in the world, like we all can talk about that and have a laugh about it.
And if one of the movies you're working on needs somebody speaking Russian, there you are, you're an actor.
Hey, here you go. And it's interesting because in the United Kingdom it's quite difficult for Russians to immigrate, and the only ones we have on a British Stunt Register, which I'm part of, we have 3 more Lithuanians, and they can speak Russian as well, and then we have actually 1 Russian guy whose parents immigrated long time before, and they spoke Russian in their family. So out of 500 people on the British Stunt Register, there's like 4 people speaking Russian, and I'm one of them. Yeah,
I understand why it's difficult now. If ever there was a stupid decision in the history of humankind, Brexit was it.
Oh, they shot themselves in the foot so badly.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. And now Brits, like I just went to Spain, where it's plus 41 degrees, by the way. I went there, and
that's 41 in Celsius.
Hey, how does it work?
It's about 100 degrees above 100 degrees in Fahrenheit.
I always get confused with all the Celsius and Fahrenheit and stuff. No, that's what I was talking about, Celsius.
Yeah.
It's plus 41 Celsius, so what is it Fahrenheit then?
And for it above 100.
Above 100.
But 41 in Fahrenheit is cold.
Oh, okay.
Freezing is 32.
There you go.
Fahrenheit makes no sense, but in Celsius, water freezes at 0 and boils at 100.
Yeah.
In Fahrenheit,
Doesn't,
32 and 212.
Look into that stuff. So anyways, as I was getting out of the plane, and they go straight away 2 lines. So one is non-EU citizens and EU citizens. EU citizens just go nicely through, and there's all Brits who are just sitting in a queue for like an hour or something.
Yeah, together with the plane that just arrived from India.
Yay!
With 800 people who are trying to use underwear labels as identification. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
So yeah, and there's a lot of things going on, but like for me, I got my settled status straight away because like I've been there longer than 5 years, and those who didn't stay there for longer than 5 years, and they would be like 2 years, whatever, they would have it as well, but official one would be a little bit later. Yeah. So they couldn't like just this labor force when they have all these people, skilled workers, and they can't just like, okay, you guys have to leave. They need that force.
Yeah, but that's what Brexit did. It was the silliest, stupidest thing for people to do. And just like in America, nobody believed that Trump would win. Even Trump didn't believe that Trump would win. In Brexit, it was the same thing. People like Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson knew perfectly well that it would be an idiotic idea, and I'm sure the day before the referendum they thought it would be turned down.
And they didn't take into account that there's a lot of people up north who don't travel, they don't care about any of that, and there are a lot of older generation who are kind of annoyed that they would go somewhere to their malls and they see there's a lot of black people or whatever, and they're like, oh, I want to get rid of this. You know what? Those black people didn't came from EU, just so you know.
Yeah, they came from Jamaica and Barbados, man. It was a racist thing. And, again, they were claiming in advance of Brexit that Great Britain was sending £350 million a week or whatever it was to Brussels, which was ridiculous. I mean, you could look at any piece of documentation about this and see that was just a bald-faced lie.
Yeah.
And they got away with it. And that, I think, is the most dangerous thing in the world right now. Politicians all over the world have learned that they can say anything at all, and a certain amount of people will believe it. And that's the insidious role of Fox News, faw noise as I call it, in America, is as the sort of vicious propaganda arm of the Republican Party.
And on this, we're going to end the second segment.
Okay.
Also, one of the kind of reasons why I really noticed your activity, and you've been very outspoken, and which I think is amazing that we have you here in Latvia, especially for gay community. And as I had a little chat before, I said that like when I lived in Canada, I was exposed to gay community more, and I started to understand more about the problems and the issues and the challenges this community is facing on a daily basis, which is in Vancouver. In Canada is not as bad, but I would meet some people who would move specifically from these small towns because they finally can get out of the closet and all this thing. And I remember, so I worked as a dancer. Some of my listeners, I've talked about this before in my other podcasts. I worked in the gay clubs as a go-go dancer. And here in Latvia, I actually used to be part of Edmund Devezan and Dave Studio. I used to compete in world championships as a hip-hop dancer, and then I used to do ballroom dancing. So I danced since I was a kid. But anyways, when I was exposed to gay people, and I remember there's this one guy, he comes over to me after I did the show. He comes over to me and like this big guy, like very serious face, and he looks at me like, "Ooh, not nice dancing." I was, "Oh, thank you." And do you have any plans later today? Like I'm having a party in my house. I was like, yeah, sure, I could come over and stuff. And then somehow I was just like, "Are you like interested in me?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're quite cute." And I was like, "You gay?" Because he came across so straight to me. I thought like he was more straight than I ever been in my life. But then we talked about later, he became a very good friend of mine. He said that he had to be in this closet for like till he was like 20 years old. And then you kind of little by little you hear more of these stories and how people struggle to get out. And then actually the other guy who was like my mentor, he's an older gentleman now, his name is David. And he also grew up in this small town where he had to get married, and his wife already had a child, so they didn't have to have their own kids, whatever. But only when he moved to Canada, to Vancouver, again, he can be openly talking about it. And you think Canada is so much more, but not. But comparingly with Latvia, I remember that I just could just imagine how people struggle with this kind of thing. And then I just love that you are there with this flag there and just always helping and protecting. And I'll listen to some of your interviews before that when you said like, "Come on guys, let's get out and let's, And I remember also there was this one nasty year, and probably there were more of them before, when there was this one Pride when these old ladies come out with the bags of craps throwing at people and stuff like that.
2005 and 2006.
Yeah,
yes.
and then at the time, just because I never understood, like, and no one talks about that in the school. My parents wouldn't talk about it. Like definitely there's in my little school in Viljani, which is like 6,000 people, there's definitely gay people. Everywhere gay people. Lesbians, gay people, it doesn't matter. And I was just like thinking about like, so I had a classmate or something who was probably sitting there and we're talking about, we're gonna go dance and hang out with ladies and all that stuff. And they're thinking like, well, I just need to hide it and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
So
and they're going to come along and watch you while you're dancing with the ladies.
There you go. Yeah. But just really wanted to say thank you for that. And I want to ask you, so how do you see the difference now, like since you moved here and to this point, like the progress? Was there like the stagnation at some point?
The first thing I want to say is that you are what is known as gay for pay in our world.
Show me the dollar.
Yeah.
I was paying for my university. That was the only reason I was gay for pay.
Well, nevertheless. The fact that I am gay got here before I got here myself. I was the first openly gay American-Latvian back in the day, and was the first openly gay Latvian here in Latvia for a while, you know, the only gay in the village twice, as they put it in Little Britain.
Only gay in the village.
I'm the only gay in the village.
I love that show, by the way.
Yeah, it was, I mean, when I came here, it was with this sort of idea that I had been like a gay activist in America for all this time, so now I was going to be a Latvian activist. And it was like 4 months here before I met another gay man here in Latvia. And it was at the Re-establishment Congress of the Latvian Social Democratic Workers' Party, where he and I were there as translators for foreign dignitaries who were there. And I don't know where he learned English as well as he did. He was a local, but he also spoke very good English, and it was sort of, you know, one poke, 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 and I discovered that he was gay, and we both fell into this relationship, which wasn't good for him and it wasn't good for me. Yeah. So that, but it was just such a relief to find a gay person, gay person here. And then I went back to America and lived in Washington, and Washington has a very good gay community, and a very interesting one. And when I came back to Latvia again, it was with sort of, you know, what you're going to do. Because I've never been a particularly sexual person. I enjoy living by myself. I don't need a husband or whatever. And in politics, back in the mid-90s, this fascist organization called the Latvian National Front started to publish a newsletter called DDD, which stood for Deoccupation and Debolshevization and D-something else. And among other things, they published, without comment or criticism, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is, you know, this grotesquely anti-Semitic forgery from the Tsarist era. They are anti-Semitic, and they were the first ones to be really publicly homophobic as well. They released a book called Homophobia, The Destruction of Civilization. And it had essays from various people. And as I was the only openly gay person here, I figured prominently in this book. Eventually, the first years that Latvia was independent, the community, such as it was, got a lot of help from Sweden, and particularly from Stockholm. The Stockholm gay community sort of came and nurtured. And during the first years, we had various events and stuff like that. Partly the community can be traced through the presence of gay bars in Riga. The very first one was up in the attic of the dormitory of a factory. And as you were going up the stairs, you know, people would be opening their doors and looking, and
you had to do a password.
Yeah.
What's the password?
Not necessarily a password, but you got up to the top and you had to bend your head because there were pipes all around. And then the bar itself, the door opened into 3 rooms in a row that were all, you know, in the Latvian style with wooden walls and whatnot. And when I went in there, the first thing I thought was, if an American fire marshal saw something like this, then and so that was there for a while. Then the next one, for balance, was in the basement of another building in Sadovnikova Ila.
What year was that?
92, 93.
Oh, wow, a long time ago.
Yeah. Then the longest lasting gay bar in Riga was called Purvs, or the Swamp, which was for years and years and years. There was one called 808, which was the only really gay bar in the sense that it only allowed men to come in, no women. All the other bars have let women in. And since then, it has proven that Riga can support 2 gay bars, but no more. It's always been 2. They have come and gone. There was one called XXL, and which is now called Top Club. There was one called the Golden
Golden
Bar.
Heard of that one. Actually, I went to Golden, I think.
Yeah, that was nice. It was nice. But only 2, and now it's only 1. Now it's only Top Club because I think people have stopped going to bars. There was the there was a pandemic, but now I mean you've got Grindr and whatever all those places are called.
Grindr's been around for a long time, and I'm so jealous usually when gay guys just go, we hang out together, and like, wait, I'm gonna be away for 2 hours. What happened? Oh, I got a match here. It's like, and I was like, show me the photo, and all it is just penis. I was like, where's the face? I didn't give a fuck about the face. Yeah, you assholes.
Yeah, well, you know that many women over the course of history have had to say to straight men, my eyes are up here, not down here. So.
But no, it's the thing is that the straight guys are getting very jealous about this. Like, we can't go, even on Tinder, like, there's always going to be at least one date. You're not going to go, oh, just come to my bedroom. Yeah. You know, with gay guys, it's like, they like, just like the way you look. Yeah. It's all good. Yeah, and then I remember when I also worked in gay clubs in London, so we went somewhere performing, when Manchester or somewhere, we had these like performance days, and then some of our guys were just like, oh, I'm gonna be back in 2 hours. It's like, where did you go? Oh yeah, I had a good sex.
Yeah. And we also never had to worry about getting pregnant, which also helped. Exactly. Of course, AIDS put a thing. But back to Latvia. I don't remember exactly when, but eventually an organization called Mozaika was established as sort of the umbrella organization, and it has been politically active. It has sponsored a lesbian basketball team, which has participated in basketball in Europe, but there was never really what would be for such an organization in America, in the sense of like you have a book reading club and you have sports teams and you have religious organizations. When I came of age in Chicago, there was like, and this was in the 1970s, there was like this whole gay infrastructure waiting for me. And so I could dive right in. There's nothing like that here. In politics, in 2005, for no reason at all, they amended our constitution to say that a marriage can only be between one man and one woman. They have been our politicians have been cowardly to an astonishing degree. But our Constitutional Court has now started to release rulings. One specific issue was 2 lesbians who had a baby sued over the fact that if the non-birthing person had been a man, he would have had access to state-financed parental leave for however long the time was, so that the father can bond with the baby and whatever the thinking there is. But that was not available to the woman who was the non-birthing mother, so they sued. And eventually the Constitutional Court ruled that that is unacceptable and told the government that they had to change the passage in the labor law, which speaks to this particular issue, but also, by the way, you need to pass a law on cohabitation. Because you need to recognize these people in some status before you can start talking about all the rest of this.
So that would take them to be to allow to get married.
No. Just to register a partnership and I mean. The law was drawn up by the Justice Ministry. The Justice Minister is a guy named Janis Bodans, who comes from a party that is called the Conservative Ones. Their website to this very day says that same-gender couples in Latvia can handle all of their affairs under existing law, which is...
We're conservative already.
Yeah, which is total nonsense. But in the meantime, and our parliament has not been able to even pass that. They were supposed to do it by June 15th. It is now, June whatever, and they didn't. They just ignored the Constitutional Court ruling. They passed it on 2 readings, but on 3rd reading they couldn't get it done. In the meantime, our administrative court has now ruled in 7 different cases that 2 people of the same gender who have been living together and have joint property are to be considered a family as defined in the Latvian Constitution. And the relevant passage is the same one which they amended to say that a marriage can only be between a man and a woman, but it says the state protects families. And then goes into marriage and children and other stuff like that. And this is where the court has found reason to declare that two people of the same gender are also a family and must be seen as such by the state. Now, that doesn't mean anything for politics. That doesn't mean that politicians will all of a sudden pass a gay marriage law. I think what will happen is that our courts will keep handing down these rulings, and sometime in the foreseeable future, the European Court of Human Rights is going to say, all right, let's stop messing around. Gay marriage must be the law in all of the European Council of Europe member states. Yeah. Because they've been inching that way for years and years and years and years and years.
What is the case in rest of the Baltic countries, Estonia, Lithuania?
Estonia passed a partnership law 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. And the Lithuanians, I'm guessing, not really.
No, Lithuania is very Catholic.
Very Catholic, conservative.
Very Catholic. But I mean, all three Baltic capital cities have pride parades and pride events. In 2015 we had Europride here in Riga. The man and woman who went to the Pride organization, the Central Pride organization, and to convince them that it should be organized in a post-Soviet country that nobody has ever heard of. They deserve a Nobel Prize for getting it here. But that was wonderful, and it was, before that, Pride was always in a closed setting, either in the Värmendars Park, completely closed with police all around. One year we were down by the riverside on this huge street that was completely closed off, and there were 200 of us on this runway sized street. Europride was the breaking point. Europride, as one of the organizers said on stage that day, the first time we did this, there were 40 of us and 5,000 protesters. This time there are 40 of them and way more than 5,000 of us.
Which is awesome.
So, and there was a big, that was the first time that there was a march, and after the march there was a concert. I was the MC.
Hey.
And
did you do some singing?
No, I did not sing myself. The star was an American named Steve Grand, who shortly before that had released a video called All American Boy. Which he financed himself with all of his credit cards, and it went viral on the internet, and it's about a gay man pining for a straight man, and be my all-American boy tonight is how the lyric goes. And so he was here, and there was a drag queen named Miss Peppermint from New York, and it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event. And since then, the prides have been rotating through the 3 Baltic cities. Tallinn will do it 1 year, Riga will do it 1 year, Vilnius will do it 1 year. And then for 2 years there was no pride because of the pandemic, and then this year the 3 cities decided, what the hell, we'll just do it ourselves. And so Vilnius had pride, and we had our pride last weekend, the parade and the concert.
Last weekend?
Yeah,
Just
on the
missed
18th.
it.
Yeah.
Talking about drag queens, by the way, are you familiar with the RuPaul Drag Race? Do you ever follow it?
No. I have no objection to drag queens, but I have no particular interest in them either.
As a story, just like I actually worked with one of them in LA who was a finalist. He's a very famous, his name is Shane. His drag name was Courtney Act. He's actually a very, very talented singer. And he's from Australia, and he's like very also outspoken. You can see him on Twitter. Well, you can't see him because you're banned.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and I was lucky enough to meet some of those drag queens in LA. Really cool.
Yeah, they're wonderful people. I mean, I watch RuPaul on various shows and he's always funny, and he's always very wise and he's sort of like the fairy godmother of the gay world. When I watch TV in the evening, the first thing I watch is the Rachel Maddow show, which is on MSNBC, a political show. MSNBC is the anti-Fox News kind of thing, but the difference is, Fox News will say that MSNBC lies all the time, but if MSNBC makes a mistake, they say so and admit to it, and they never knowingly lie. So I watch that. Drink my wine, and then drink almost everything I watch I get from the internet.
Okay.
And I have a little thing where I can download it from the computer and put it on the TV set.
Yeah.
And so I sit here and...
Sweet.
and
So talking about the gay situation, gay scene in Latvia, what do you think? So as I said, like obviously it's been a long road, so the progress is there, which is good. Probably not as big progress as we want to. But what do you think could be done? And as I understand, it should be education. Someone should be educating. There should be more mentors. People should be more talking about it out loud and not covering this. Because especially places like my little school, like honestly, as a child, and the internet didn't really exist at the time, and there was not much to look it up. There was not many films showing anything. And talking about films, I really want to talk about things like the Freddie Mercury film, which came out, the Rhapsody. I don't know if you've seen it. And then there's a Rocketman, Elton John's film. I worked on that one. I was actually one of the dancers/fighters as a stunt performer. And Elton John came over on the set and said hi to everyone. He was not in very good shape. Something happened with his back. So those films are something what makes us think more about that, to understand how amazing these performers are, and they're just humans and they have problems just like everyone else. Yeah. And how
before that there was Brokeback Mountain. Before that there was Longtime Companion.
Yeah.
Around that same time there was Will and Grace on TV. There was the very first.
Will and Grace. Yeah, I actually watched that show.
Will and Grace. Funny. There was a comedy called Soap in the 1970s, which was the first one to have a permanent gay character on it. It was played by Billy Crystal. He was called Jody. When I was growing up, there was nothing on television or in advertising to suggest that people like me existed at all.
Even in the States.
Even in the States. Yeah. I mean, we're talking the 1960s, that was a while back. But, culture catches up. There have been theaters. One specific theater in Latvia has, Jaunais Riga, the new Riga theater, it tends to do more experimental stuff, and they have had plays with gay characters in them. And right now there is a play, a French play, a very bizarre French play, which is being performed. It's about two gay men and a power struggle between them. And one of the actors is John Malkovich.
That people keep talking about him. He's one of my favorite actors actually. And I see him in one of the great films I've seen in Red, and he's been playing with he's amazing.
Yeah, and here in Latvia, I don't know why, but the other man is played by a Lithuanian woman called I can't remember her name. It's a long Lithuanian name, but she's dressed up as, she's in male drag.
Yeah.
And
how the hell John Malkovich ended up here?
I know.
Which is amazing. And apparently they had some interviews with him. He's like loving it.
Yeah, he likes it here. He's talked about coming back and directing a play afterwards. So it's coming into the culture. I think that the main thing that is going to need to happen is a change in generations. In my generation, there are to this very day only two publicly open, well-known people who are gay, me and the foreign minister. But, kids don't care about me or the foreign minister. They have their own world and they have their own heroes. And for years now, that's been a community in which there are no hang-ups, really. On Draugiem LV, which is like the Latvian Facebook, a lot of kids say, I'm gay, I'm a lesbian, I'm a trans person, just like anybody else would. And at the Pride event, there were lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of young people, including young people from all over Latvia. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some from Viļaka, where you grew up. Viļane, yeah. Viļaka, I guess, is a bigger town than Viļani.
I'm not sure about it. Viļaka is not far away from us, and people keep mixing it up. It's like, I'm very proud Viļanian.
Yeah, Viļanian.
My friends call it Lalani because Vaxers is right next to it.
Yeah.
And then when I joined university, and all of my university fellows were from Riga mainly, and then they said, where are you from, Renars? I'm like, I'm from Viļani. Well, what? Well, it's near to Vaxers. You're going to be Lalani.
Yeah. Way out there in the east.
Yeah, and it just stays there. Now I was hanging out with them like 20 years ago. We joined university together. They still call me from Lalani. I was like, no, I live in Bali in UK now.
Yeah.
You Lalanian anyways.
So now you're in Balala.
Balala, here you go. That's the one.
Yeah, but I mean, the young people are going to, the cliche is young people are the future of the world, and that's true, and that's true here as well. Like I said, I think the European Court is going to step in at some point in the foreseeable future. It's an entity of the Council of Europe, not the European Union, which means that when they do, it'll also be mandatory for Russia and Belarus, which will be interesting to see.
That's going to be very interesting, especially for Russia.
No, Russia will withdraw. Russia is already basically withdrawn from the Council of Europe because Russians keep complaining to the Court of Human Rights, and Russia being Russia, everybody who sues Russia wins, whether it's prison issues or whatever. So Russia has pretty much been withdrawn from there as well. But young people are going to come up. I mean, we have parties in Parliament now which are perfectly fine with the LGBT community.
That's great.
And have been it's been interesting to watch. The Conservatives have been having to vote for this law that they drew up because they're part of the governing coalition. If they were in opposition, they would never, ever, 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 ever think of voting for something like this. And it'll be interesting to see what Latvians elect on October 1st. There are going to be lots of parties. There are going to be lots of populists. There are going to be lots of crazy people. But it would be nice for the next 4 years to elect a sane 21st century parliament, just like it is imperative, people in America, not to allow the Republicans to take back either the House or the Senate, because if you do, that will be the end of America.
It's all of a sudden got cold in here.
Yeah.
I got chills down my spine. You got it, people?
Yeah.
Whatever he said. No, but it's great. So we have situation is much better, and obviously internet helps. All the TikTok helps. All this. People around the world are more openly doing being gay, being themselves, and I think what struggle is going to start is it's already starting is with when it's all the more complicated transgender and all that fluidity that is somewhere where people still kind of tiptoeing around and trying to figure out what it is, and instead it gets to the point where I'm just going to go now to the swimming pool and I'm going to say I identify myself as a woman and I'm going to go to a women's changing room. Well, that's where they dealing with in states, and they don't know really what to do with it.
I know, and that's stupid.
It is freaking stupid. Even in prison, have you heard about that? Where this guy identifies himself as a woman, goes in the women's prison and impregnates women there and rapes them and does all weird shit.
Yeah, see, that's all wrong. And that's why people are so questioning about this, because malicious people will misuse this for their own purposes. I mean, there was all this hysteria over girls' and boys' bathrooms in America a couple of years ago, where the Republicans just went batshit crazy about this. Now, I personally don't know whether gender reassignation is appropriate for somebody who is younger than 18, when you can also start to drink and smoke and drive a car and do whatever. But on the other hand, I knew that I liked other little boys when I was 6 or 7 years old. And what I would have given for somebody older than me to say you're okay. Yeah. I mean, I never thought that I was sick. Your camera died again.
I don't know what's going on with that. Well, we are on both of these.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I never thought I was sick. I never thought I was the only one. But I just kept my head down at school and didn't really worry about it. I messed around a little when I was younger, and that was fun. That's not true anymore. If you know where to look, you can find all the support you need for anything that you want to be or anything that you want to do in life. You can find out how to be a
anything,
tap dancer.
100%. Just go on YouTube. There's going to be 100 videos coming out with that, which is amazing, and that's great. Listen, the last thing I want to talk about is the things what I asked you about: the books, films, and people. Yeah. So films, I will go straight away with films. One of the films, and I literally finished it watching yesterday because it's very difficult to find it. It's obviously not on Netflix, none of these new places. I downloaded it from somewhere. It's the Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was especially the Igor with his eyes, and for a long period of time, I was like, that's some kind of CGI. What the hell
No.
is this going on with eyes? Yeah, I checked it
No,
afterwards.
Marty
That's his-
Feldman, he had a specific condition which made his eyes blur out. Yeah, if you haven't seen that, it is so funny. Like, what hump?
It's what hump? Yeah,
I could
he
help
just-
you with the hump. What hump?
But also, I really like when he went from these faces, like the skulls is like 5 years old, 2 years old, 1 year old, and then his face is
Yeah.
sitting in there.
Yeah.
And this is fresh.
The director is called Mel Brooks, and he's done parody films about. That was a parody about Frankenstein, and he's done a parody about westerns and about space movies. And he's just a genius. He's
Right.
wonderful, and to me, that's the funniest one of them all.
Yeah, and I really liked also the guy who was playing Frankenstein is one of the main characters from Everyone Loves Raymond. It was like, that's the cool actor, and then in the end he had a little speaking part, and then how cool they made this all fun that the Frankenstein or that son, he had this like future wife, and then she kind of hooked up with
Yeah.
with the monster.
Oh, sweet mystery of life, at last I found you.
Hey, I gotta give second time to sing on this. Yes.
That was the inimitable Madeline Kahn.
It was so funny.
She's a wonderful actress.
And then that he also got a little bit of some monster thing going on, and he slept with that German lady.
Yeah.
And the German lady also so hilarious.
Yeah, that was Terry Garr.
Yeah, it was so funny that she did the accent and everything. Then what else from the films? Unfortunately, I wasn't able. So what was the other one? You told me.
It may have been Hair.
Hair, I couldn't even find that one, so I kind of gave up on that one. So you quickly can tell me about Hair. Why is that your
Hair
choice?
is a movie that was made by Milos Forman in 1978, I'm thinking. It's an anti-Vietnam film, is
Right.
what it is. It's a musical about a guy from the countryside who gets drafted into the army and goes to New York and falls in with a bunch of hippies. And it's funny, and it's very, very musical, and it has a fairly tragic ending. It's just beautiful. When it first came out, I saw it 3 times in 2 days.
Oh wow!
In Germany.
In Germany.
In Germany, where I was studying in high school. I just loved that movie.
Amazing. So that's another film to check you out, guys. And then Sound of Music, 100% agree.
Yeah.
Amazing film. It's funny because I can actually relate to it a little bit because my mom, who was teaching me poetry, to read poetry like dilatation, which was very like, how would you resuscitate? Not resuscitating is a different one. When you recite, yeah, when you recite with the as a prose or poetry with expression. So in Latvia, that's a big thing. So they have like competitions like a spelling bee in states. And my mom, she used to be a champion in this thing in Latvian level. And then since I was like 5, 6 years old, she was teaching me how to read the poetry. And then also the other thing what she did, she organized our family and 2 other families to have like a Von Trapp family concept. Mm-hmm. So it was like my sister would play violin and play piano. I would be reading my poetry. My dad was playing accordion and other instruments. My mom also would be reading poetry because both of us, we are tone deaf. We can't play anything. Although I learned how to play guitar eventually because I knew that's a babe magnet. And then we had 2 other families who also had like different talents. And we combined them together, and we performed across Latvia for some period of time.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and that's why I kind of can relate to a little bit to Von Trapp family in the film. But this film was like, I think there was this ups and downs. There was like these ups were like amazing singing and just like so kind of with the music. And in Canada, I went a couple times in sing-alongs. That's quite popular there, and I went to Sound of Music to that. But then there's these points where like the family has to flee from the Germans and all that, which is kind of sad.
It has a serious basic. Yeah. That's the same with Hair. Hair is also a very uplifting film. On YouTube you can find songs from Hair. Aquarius, for example.
Oh, yes, I did actually look it up. Aquarius was used in a newer film, an American film. Now I forgot what was the title of it. But Aquarius is like when they're all hippies dancing around and having that kind of...
Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find that. The ending of Hair is Let the Sunshine In.
Yeah.
Which is another.
Let the sunshine. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not going to sing.
that one.
Yeah.
So it starts and ends with powerful songs and has lots of songs in between. I mean, The Sound of Music, it's It's cute and it's lovely. It has Julie Andrews. I don't know if anybody else could have played that role as well as she did.
Yeah.
Basically because she has 6 octaves in her voice.
Yeah.
And when she, at the end of Do Re Mi, where she goes 4 octaves up on the last Do, I was like, whoa.
Wow.
That's good.
The rain, the da da dear. Yeah, that was, and also like I just remember where I heard that song Aquarius. If you know that film 40 Years Old Virgin.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that one, and the end because he finally got laid.
Oh, okay. So
and then he was dancing, and they were in this like going around. So you should check it out. It's actually this comedian who does The Office, American comedian with the big nose. What's his name? Farrell, not Farrell, something else. The Office American version, not the British version. You haven't seen any of those. Ricky Gervais, no. So yeah,
I know who Ricky Gervais is.
Yeah, I actually went to his stand-up. I watched him does stand-up in front of 10,000 people, and then I thought I'm special doing stand-up in front of 200 people.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I changed my mind.
Yeah, he's a pretty vicious comedian.
Oh, yeah. You guys have something in common.
Yeah. When he hosts award shows, he will eat people up alive.
Oh yeah. Well, those are notorious. Like he's done like 3 or 4 award shows, and they keep getting him on, even though he just destroys everyone.
Yeah, he's done the Oscars, he's done the Tonys, I think he's done the BAFTAs a couple of times.
Yeah. He comes with his glass of beer.
Yeah.
And just goes.
Oh, okay.
Next one was those are books. So I did audio version. Unfortunately, didn't have enough time to read them. But I really like the fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stops Cafe.
Yeah.
So it kind of consisted from these all different little stories. One of my favorite stories was when this lady, she was sitting there and trying to park into this spot, and like she was waiting for this guy to leave, and she's just about to park in there, and these young girls just come in and like quickly steal her spot, and as they come out, and she's like, "Excuse me, girls, that was my spot," and they're like, "Well, let's face it, you're old, something like, and you're too slow." And then as they left, as they're coming back, she's banging that car with her car, and then those girls are losing their shit. Like, "What are you doing?" "Well, let's face it, I'm much older and my insurance is much better."
Yeah, that's true. But before that, there's the line, and there she was sitting on the ground, feeling old and fat and worthless again. Yeah. It's a book about. The basic story is in a nursing home, a very, very old woman, and the Kathy Bates character goes to visit her mother-in-law or somebody else there, and they get to talking, and what they're talking about is the old woman's life in the 1930s and 40s, when they ran a cafe, and it has, the film doesn't show it, but the book has a lesbian subplot.
Really?
Yeah, the Iggy character and the...
Iggy, yeah.
And
well, I did the audio version as a book.
Yeah.
That's what I was listening.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they were very clearly, there was a lesbian relationship there. The film glossed it over. But it's just a beautiful, it's just a nice story. It's just a nice story. You know, the kid who gets his arm ripped off on the train and they call him Stump after that or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever that
one. Stump, yeah, they were making fun of him. And I was listening to audiobooks that Western, like the Southern accent, American accent, all that, yeah. So I was like...
They're all talking like this. Yeah, and then there's that line in the book, all she ever had to do was take off her glasses, and he was a goner. About that.
Oh, then I also really remember the one where this guy was very rude to her. As she was coming in, he pushed her. So he pushed her first, and then at the second time, she was like trying to figure out what happened, and then he pushed her, and all her groceries were all over the place, and he just laughed with his girl, and they left and stuff, and these kind of stories.
Yeah. It's a redemption story. She finds herself through the tales told by the old woman, and then at the very end there's that Iggy is the old woman with the apple stand, the fruit stand.
Right.
And
I'm trying to remember that. I just remember that one of them at the end someone died, and then this other lady was like, I feel so sad. There was no one else to talk to, and yeah.
I think it closes with the gravestone, which says, "I am still your beekeeper," or whatever. whatever it was.
How do you remember that well?
I've read that book probably 600 times.
Oh, wow.
I just love that book.
So the next book was Gone with the Wind, which is very interesting. So there's a movie, and also there's a book in Latvian, like Vējiem līdzi.
Yeah.
And I think I did read it, but it's difficult to remember it. And then I got the audiobook. It's like 40 hours.
I know.
You were like, oh, you want a book? Here you go.
Yeah, it's a long,
it takes you 5 weeks to get that one.
book. It is
but
a long,
you know what?
book.
I was kind of getting into it, and the one thing I straight away noticed, there's a very interesting similarities to also one of my favorite books, Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh, I don't know. It's too hot. That camera's just giving up. And so, To Kill a Mockingbird, and there was a very interesting parallels how back in the days they were thinking and how they were treating also like the black people and all that stuff. But yeah, I need to spend some time with the Gone with the Wind, I guess, to do more research.
Wait until you get COVID, and then you can spend the COVID time listening to Gone with the Wind on audiobook.
Oh, wait. Okay, let's go to public figures.
Yeah.
Let's go to people. So you said straight away you have 3 favorite people, your 3 sisters.
Yeah.
Which is really sweet.
Yeah.
And what do they do? What do they do back in the States? And now you're going to go visit them again, so you have good relationships?
I actually like one of them better than the other two.
Oh, right. But you're never going to tell us.
Yeah, my oldest sister, I'm the oldest in the family. I have a sister who is 2 years younger than I am, and then I have a sister who is 10 years younger than I am, and a sister who is 11 years younger than I am, because the 10-year-old was a surprise and the 11-year-old was created so that the 10-year-old would have somebody to play with. Is that the long and the short of it. My oldest sister is a social worker, and she works primarily with children. Well, she's now in an administrative position, a managerial position, but she used to work with children whose parents had, their rights as parents had been taken away for one reason or another. And she once told me about a kid whose father and grandfather were the same person, in that the same person had sex with the mother and the daughter. Beautiful. Yeah, so she's dealt with some shit. My middle sister is a elementary school teacher. And my youngest sister first trained as a professional chef, which means that she always cooks Thanksgiving for the whole family. But she is the principal of a Latvian kindergarten in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Okay. How big is the Latvian kindergarten in Chicago?
30 kids, I'm thinking. It was that was interesting. When Latvia regained its independence, emigre Latvians sort of lost their way. And, at first there was this idea that all Latvians all over the world were going to move to Latvia right away.
Yeah.
And I remember in 1977-78, when I was at that Latvian high school in Germany, we had a panel discussion about what would happen if Latvia were to suddenly become independent tomorrow. And I said, I think that hardly anybody from the West would move to Latvia because, you have families and the cat and the dog and the job and the whatever. It's ironic that I was one of the very first ones who ended up here when hardly anybody else did. Hardly anybody else did. And so 2 things happened. One was that Latvians started to emigrate to Western Europe and to other parts of the world, especially after we joined the European Union. I'm sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice here. And people started to realize that the community wasn't going anywhere. So the big summer high schools in Latvian summer high schools in America, Garazers and Kursa, now have as many students each summer as they did back in the 70s when I was going there. So people have decided they need to be Latvians where they are. They don't necessarily have to move to Latvia. And like the educational system, the Latvian Education Ministry has all sorts of materials that it sends out to little Saturday and Sunday schools and summer schools, to help them with what they are. I personally think that those summer schools need to, for a long time, have needed to be just 6-week total immersion courses in the Latvian language, because what they teach geography and history and all that stuff. Well, if the kid doesn't really speak Latvian, he doesn't care what the second longest river in Latvia is, which is what you're taught.
Even the kids who live here, they don't really care about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's be honest.
Absolutely, and I don't know what the second longest river in Latvia is. For that matter, I don't even know what the longest river in Latvia is.
Gauja?
Yeah, it's not the Daugava. I know that.
Daugava is
No.
the biggest. I think maybe Gauja.
It's some sneaky river that's
Little
snuck
one.
into the thing. So people have been and the emigres who have gone to like Ireland, and they've set up their own stuff. As far as I know, the old emigrants and the new emigrants don't really interact very much. They're two different communities with two different interests. But now, there are Latvian Saturday schools in Ireland now, and there are church worship groups in Ireland now, and Latvian newsletters in Ireland now, and Latvian websites in Ireland now. So people have decided that they're going to live elsewhere, but they're still going to maintain their Latvian-ness, as it were.
Yeah.
And, history sort of tells us that lasts through no more than about 2 generations.
And then it gets lost.
And then it gets lost. I look at my 5 nephews and 1 niece among my 3 sisters. They all speak Latvian to a certain extent. My middle sister married a man from Latvia. She was living here in Latvia and married a man, and got pregnant and went to the gynecologist in Valmiera once, and the next day was packing up to go back to America. I don't know what the gynecologist said to her, but she went back to America. He turned out to be gay, so they got divorced, and she married another man from Latvia, and their children speak good Latvian, because they don't particularly speak Latvian to one another, but they speak Latvian with their parents. My younger sister is married to an American who does not speak Latvian, and she has taught both of her children good Latvian. They both started in that Latvian kindergarten back in the day, where everything happens in Latvian, and where there are teachers from Latvia who come and help out. My oldest sister was married to a Black American and has only 1 son called Alex. And Alex grew up not interested in Latvian at all. But then when he was a teenager, he started to be more interested in his mother's heritage and started to, sort of pick stuff up. And she and he were here in Latvia in 2018 for the centennial, when Latvia became 100 years old. And they came for the celebration in November. And he did well enough that he could ask questions in stores and stuff like that. And of course, all the Latvian women thought that he was just adorable, this little half-black kid. No, I don't think so.
Because that's one of the craziest, to see a black person or like dark brown person with blue eyes.
Yeah, he's sort of cocoa-colored. He's not very dark. He's not very dark. But my sister said that he once complained that she had not taught him more Latvian than he did, but he's learned more. My middle sister's second husband and one of his sons, his oldest son, with her. There's one older one that she had with the other guy, but this one, and he's 21 now. They're in Latvia right now. I saw them last Friday, I'm thinking. He sent me an email in the morning and said, "We're here." Okay, so we had some drinks and dinner, and they're out somewhere today celebrating Jani appropriately. But the kid speaks really very good Latvian, with a slight accent and missing vocabulary sometime, but good Latvian, solid Latvian.
Yeah, I think it all goes down to where you're going to use that language.
Yeah.
When I can say from my experience, since I left Latvia about 14 years ago, so when I lived in Canada, maybe I would see 1-2 Latvians a year kind of thing, but I would see Russians way more, so I can use that language, and then rest of the world the same kind of thing. And for me also, like, I noticed that anytime you hang out with Latvian communities, they kind of stay with their communities, and that is very similar to Italian, Spanish, where they like just to hang out with their own. They stay with their own. With me, I always like variety. I have nothing against Latvians or Russians, any in that matter. But I like when we have one person from this part of the world, one person from this part of the world, so we speak all sorts of languages and we learn all sorts of stuff. But when we tend to just have that one kind of language in one community, for me, it just gets boring. That's kind of how I look at it.
You are truly a man of the world.
Hey.
Yeah,
and what was that? Gay for pay.
Yeah, and gay for pay and a man of the world. When I was growing up, one thing that we used to discuss as teenagers when we had smoked some discussion enhancer was, is there any person in the world who speaks Latvian and does not speak any other language?
Oh, that's a good one.
Which we felt was unlikely because we all spoke English, of course, living in America, and we figured that wherever other Latvians, emigres, lived, they spoke the local language, and people in Latvia obviously were all forced to learn Russian. So, and before that, I mean, in the first period of independence, it was chic to speak French or German. Mm-hmm. My maternal grandmother spoke both French and German. My parents spoke German because when they left Latvia, the Latvians first spent time in so-called displaced persons camps in Germany before they went on to wherever they went to. And my mother was 8 when they left Latvia, and my father was 12, I think. So while they were in these camps, they learned German. And when my sister and I were growing up, if they didn't want us to understand what they were talking about, they would talk in German. Yeah. But then I went to Germany for a year, and after that, it didn't work anymore. But by that time, I was 17, so there wasn't very much they wanted to talk about they didn't want me to hear.
The code language. Okay, and those for your sisters, but then you have people like, how do you say, like someone like they influence you or you like look up to them, and you chose one of you mentioned already Rachel Maddow. Yeah, earlier. So I looked it up very quickly, very briefly. So she's a host of the, it's like a political talk show or political show.
Yeah, a political information show. She is a fiercely intelligent lesbian who has a doctorate in political science from Oxford. And she just, she's just now stopped doing her own show as once a week like she used to do. She's now only doing Mondays, and other people do it on the other days because she wants to work on other projects. She's written a couple of books, she's done some documentary filmmaking, and she wants to do something else. But that's just the way I keep my fingers sort of in American politics, by watching that show every night.
Yeah. And the other one was Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
She's pretty impressive, isn't she?
Yeah.
Like what is she, like 90 years old now?
She's 96.
She's still kicking.
Yeah.
96. There's going to be a huge celebration for 100th. I'm pretty sure
if she makes it that far. Her mother lived to 101, so.
Here you go. I think she's going very well. So they had just a Jubilee celebration. The Jubilee.
Yeah, 70 years on the throne.
Yeah. Did you watch it? Did you watch the
Not
parade?
Particularly.
Yeah.
Not particularly.
So in the parade, there's this one guy was attached to a ball, and he was my ex-student, because I used to teach pole acrobatics, and he's amputee and all covered in tattoos, and he was strapped, and I'll put here in this right now when I edit it, and he was attached to this ball, flying and turning and twisting in this special contraption around his waist. Yeah. His name's Andrew.
And the Queen was probably thinking, what the?
No, she was like, what have we been smoking today?
Yeah, no, she was in Latvia back in the day. She came to open a monument to a man called George Armitstead, who in the early 1900s, despite being British, was mayor of Riga. There was a huge British business community in Riga at that time, and he was the mayor. And so she was here to open that, unveil the statue. Her husband came to our church. I'm an Anglican here in Riga, at St. Saviour's Anglican, and he came to visit us. Prince Charles has been to visit us. He brought us a christening bowl, a silver christening bowl, which when he took out of the box, he looked at very in great detail, which suggested that was the first time he had ever set eyes on the christening bowl that he was giving to us. But when the Queen was doing that, I was in a little van. She was by the Freedom Monument in the center, and the statue is not far from there. I was in a little van for Latvian television, sort of as the host for her being there. And she arrived with Latvia's president, and they laid down flowers at the monument. And then the Queen went to talk to people who had gathered there. There were, I think every Briton who was in Latvia that day had come to see the Queen. And this started to take a while. So I started talking to the audience everything I knew about the Queen and about the royal family and about Great Britain and London and just on and I had to talk for about half an hour before.
You start running out of ideas what to talk about.
No. Another time was a different one of our presidents went to the United Nations for the General Assembly opening, and we were told at Latvian television that he would start speaking at 9 a.m. Mm-hmm. And so at 9 a.m., which was 4 p.m. here in Latvia, we hooked up to this thing to find a completely empty room. And so I started to talk about everything I knew about the United Nations and its history and the countries that are in it. 53 minutes before he turned up. 53 minutes of ad lib.
Wow. And that's why you chose Elizabeth II.
Yeah, I also had to ad lib for her. I'm good at ad libbing.
You had some experience and you are good at it. Okay, and the third person we had, who like a last name, I'm pretty sure it's his stage name, Rainbow, Mr. Rainbow.
Randy Rainbow.
Randy Rainbow. Again, had just a little look at his stuff.
He is actually called Randy Rainbow. That's his real name.
Was that his given name though?
Yeah.
Or he changed it?
Yeah, no.
Wow, his mom kind of had a notion.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he's wonderful. He does little parody songs, and he has a great voice, and he does all sorts of styles of music. And
because apparently he got awarded with an Emmy, and then he's like, how can I? He was nominated for Emmy. I don't know if he got
I think
it,
so.
But he was there, and then he couldn't believe that I'm doing videos from my living room in my underwear, and I'm getting here and I'm doing this.
Yeah, and I've met Carol Burnett, and I've met Julie Andrews, and I've met. That's the nice thing about the internet. Any schlub can become world famous. Justin Bieber started out in his bedroom in his underwear, and look where he is now.
Yeah.
With half his face paralyzed. And
I just wanted to say that, but I thought I shouldn't. You said it. Cool. You can take that heat. But yeah, no, that is great. And also, like, we don't have to. And what I also like, one of the reasons I started doing podcasts, because Joe Rogan is creating this amazing platform and this following. And what he basically is saying that just because we all have opportunity to make our own TV now. Yeah. If you think about it. Yeah. We have all these YouTube channels, we have all these things, which is amazing. So then people are going to decide what they're going to watch.
Exactly. Isn't Joe Rogan kind of a crazy person?
Oh, well, who's not a crazy person?
I'm not.
Listen, I think this is a perfect ending. Thank you so much.
Before we end, I want to give one piece of advice to people who are watching this. Go to Facebook and look at the profile picture this person has on his Facebook profile. It is like a Versace model.
And now look at me here.
Yeah, look at this ugly mug now.
I love you too.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, on a serious note, before I finish the podcast, I always ask I call them the bombs of wisdom. Mm-hmm. What would be your bomb of wisdom for maybe younger generation out there, maybe people who struggle with opening the gates or the closets, or maybe someone who is getting into journalism, so just young people in general?
If you are a young person in the closet, know this. It may feel like it's going to be awful. It may feel like it's the most dangerous thing you're ever going to do, but you're going to tell your best friend that you're gay or lesbian, and the best friend is going to say, so what? And a rock is going to roll off your heart. It will get better. Is a program in America for just in this context, and it does. It really does get better for the most part.
100%. And I think nowadays this is getting easier and easier. This whole thing, like the movement is much bigger, and I wish that would be back in the days, but it wasn't. But it is what it is.
Can't have everything.
Yeah. And what about for someone who wants to get into journalism? Just give up.
No. Yeah. Go study something else.
Something more important, like for me, my mom said to me.
When I started in journalism, there were newspapers and there was television and there was radio, and that's all that there was. And so you trained to work in one of those. Today, journalists who are going to journalism school are learning how to basically do all of those things. And people who work for newspapers are now expected to also produce video stories and internet stories and whatnot. I don't know if I'd be happy in a job like that, because I'm just a basic journalist. But what I would say to somebody who's thinking about journalism is first think about whether you are interested in everything. And I mean everything. Think about whether you are a person who would feel comfortable posing any question to any person under any circumstances. including difficult questions, including questions that people would consider to be rude. If you're not, then you can't be a good journalist. You need to be able to be interested in everything so that you can analyze everything, so you can understand everything, and you need to be open to talking to everybody, that as journalists do.
Perfect.
There you go.
Thank you. This is Karlis Streips. Thank you so much, Karli. I'll shake your hand on the screen. Thank you very much. Hey! And we're done.
Blah, blah, blah. Renars Podcast.